10 Most Terrifying Weapons and Tactics in Ancient Warfare. 1. The death whistle of the Aztecs. Several decades ago, archaeologists unearthed peculiar-looking artifacts resembling human heads in an Aztec temple in Mexico. Believing them to be mere toys or decorations, they cataloged and stored them away in a warehouse. However, it was only a few years later that they discovered these were, in fact, death whistles, capable of producing ear-piercing shrieks. The ancient Aztecs used them in ceremonies or battles to intimidate their enemies. In battles, the terrifying sound produced by hundreds of death whistles had a significant psychological impact, disorienting and demoralizing the enemy. It was akin to the sound of people wailing in agony, the howling of the wind, or the shrieks of thousands of lost souls. 2. Ironclad cavalry. In the 7th–8th centuries BC, the use of cavalry gradually replaced infantry in the Near East. Some units were equipped lightly and tasked with harassing the enemy or ambushing enemy forces on the march. Others were heavily equipped and had the mission of breaking enemy formations. The heaviest cavalry unit of ancient times was the cataphract cavalry. The term cataphract originates from the Greek language, meaning fully armored or enclosed from all sides. However, cataphracts were not a product of the Greeks themselves. It was used to refer to the army of the Seleucid Empire around the 4th century BC, after they launched numerous military campaigns against neighboring countries to the east. Typically, cataphract cavalry was deployed when a massive assault on the enemy's front line was needed. Thanks to their heavy armor, they could deliver a powerful blow to the enemy. Describing the strength of cataphract cavalry, the historian Tacitus wrote, "When they charge the enemy from horseback, there's hardly any battle line that can withstand them." The unrivaled power of cataphract cavalry also had psychological effects on the enemy, as stated by the historian Cassius Dio. Describing the failure of Crassus at the Battle of Carrhae, Dio wrote, "Many were killed by sheer terror." Even during the first charge of these lance-bearing horsemen, the reputation of cataphract cavalry grew even more formidable when Heliodorus and Plutarch declared that they were so strong that one thrust could kill 2 men. 3. Poison. Throughout history, humans have used poison as a weapon. In ancient times, people would coat their hunting weapons with toxic substances to quickly kill enemies or prey. Once the strengths of poisons were understood, specialized tools and weapons were developed for their use. Researchers believe that the more sophisticated and mysterious killing tools were probably reserved for high-ranking members within tribes, creating the illusion for outsiders that their deaths were caused by some mystical force. These sudden and inexplicable deaths were often seen as mysterious and incomprehensible. In certain cultures, these poisonous substances were associated with demons, spirits, and beings from the other world. The earliest mention of poisoned weapons can be found in ancient Greek mythology, revolving around the story of Hercules poisoning his arrows with the venom of the Hydra monster. The epics of Homer also mention the use of poisoned weapons in the Trojan War. Ancient people employed countless different methods to eliminate their enemies using poison. For example, the Hindus poisoned the food of their enemies. The Chinese burned toxic plants to create what was called soul-chasing mist, and the Greeks released toxic flower petals into important waterways to poison the water supply. Even Leonardo da Vinci mentioned a story about a large ship filled with a mixture of sulfur, arsenic, and copper rust to attack enemy vessels. When the fumes from this mixture were inhaled, sailors would immediately suffocate. 4. Sling. The sling was a superior weapon during the New Kingdom of Ancient Egypt 16th–11th century BC, and was considered a super weapon of the ancient world. Its history predates its appearance in ancient Egypt by over a millennium. In 1927–1928, during excavations in the Royal Cemetery of Ur in present-day Iraq, the British archaeologist Leonard Woolley discovered an artifact known as the Royal Standard of Ur, dating back to the 3rd millennium BC. One side of this artifact depicted a war machine from the Mesopotamian region, resembling a 4-wheeled cart pulled by 4 donkeys. The artist also illustrated the operation of this weapon through drawings showing its different states of motion. The donkeys are first shown walking, then trotting, and finally galloping. To convey that this was a weapon of warfare, the artist also added images of one or two enemies being crushed by the sling. The ancient Egyptians primarily used slings to protect their infantry. Due to the unsuitable terrain in Egypt and Canaan for deploying heavy slings, the Egyptians used slings as mobile artillery platforms instead of using them for direct frontal assaults on the enemy. Warriors on slings were equipped with bows, arrows, and short spears. In addition to raining arrows on the enemy, the ancient Egyptians used this war machine to pursue retreating enemies. Greek fire. Greek fire, also known as sea fire, was a weapon that first appeared in the Byzantine Empire in the 7th century. According to the historian Theophanes, it was invented in the 6th century by a Greek architect named Kallinikos, who was originally from the city of Heliopolis before moving to Baalbek. This claim is still debated, as other historians believe it was invented in Constantinople by a group of chemists following the Alexandrian tradition. This weapon was a type of liquid. It was poured into containers and then launched using stone-throwing machines onto enemy ships, or sprayed using nozzles. It ignited on its own. Notably, the fire could still burn even when submerged in water, and pouring water on the flames only caused it to spread. As a result, it was extremely difficult to control. A small oversight could lead to significant damage and casualties for the Byzantine ships. This type of weapon played a crucial role in the victory of Constantinople against the Arab army and subsequent invasions by other forces. 6. Biological weapons. History records the devastating impact that diseases, pollution, and toxins can have on humans. Since prehistoric times, humans have drawn valuable lessons and knowledge from these costly experiences, applying them extensively in the development of biological weapons and continuously using them in warfare against enemies. In ancient times, people did not fully understand the spread of diseases, but they believed that decaying human or animal corpses were the source of illness. Starting from around 400 BCE, Scythian archers would dip their arrows into decaying bodies and feces-covered blood. English archers often planted the tips of their arrows into the ground right in front of them. By doing so, not only could they quickly draw and shoot their arrows, but the arrowheads would become contaminated and potentially cause infection to those struck by them. From around 300 BCE, Greek, Roman, and Persian warriors polluted wells with feces and animal corpses. In the 14th century, the Black Death, a pandemic believed to be the outbreak of the bubonic plague that spread throughout Europe, the Near East, and North Africa, caused the largest medical catastrophe in human history, claiming the lives of 7.5200 million people. It is painful to know that this pandemic was partly caused by humans themselves. During warfare, corpses were thrown over the walls of besieged cities to intimidate, creating an unbearable stench which itself contained disease-causing pathogens and transmitting infectious diseases to the enemy. 7. Scythian fly's tail tactic. The Scythians were renowned for their fly's tail tactic, which they employed before engaging in any other strategies such as frontal assault or defensive maneuvers. When executing this tactic, multiple units would surround and attack a target simultaneously. However, these units would move together with the target, gradually wearing down the enemy's strength and disrupting their formation from within. The slow and continuous movement, combined with being constantly subjected to long-range arrow fire, instilled fear and demoralization in the enemy forces. The Roman army experienced this firsthand when they could only move and fight within the confined space of their opponent's encirclement, merely a meter apart. The Scythians exploited this proximity. In the Battle of Carrhae in 53 BC, the Romans were huddled together in a cramped space, getting in each other's way and being shot down by arrows, wrote the Greek historian Plutarch. The dense barrage of arrows gradually disoriented the enemy, allowing mounted archers to concentrate their fire and effectively eliminate the opposing forces. It can be said that this opening tactic of the battle involved raining arrows upon the enemy, tightly maintaining the objective to deplete the enemy's strength, while enabling mounted archers to shoot volleys and accurately target their adversaries. 8. Chemical weapons. The earliest archaeological evidence of chemical weapon use was found in the Dura Europos region on the banks of the Euphrates River in Syria. Dura Europos was a Roman city that fell into the hands of the Sasanians in the mid-3rd century. Although there are no written records of the final siege, French and American archaeologists have pieced together clues about what transpired. Extensive excavations of the city of Dura Europos were conducted in the 1920s. In 1932, archaeologists discovered a Persian tunnel and another tunnel belonging to the Romans. Additionally, they found the remains of at least 19 Roman soldiers and a Sasanian soldier piled up in the tunnels. In 2009, after studying the collected evidence, researchers gained an understanding of what occurred during the siege. The Sasanians employed toxic gas to eliminate the Roman defenders. They threw sulfur and bitumen into the fire, creating a suffocating gas. When the Roman guards inhaled it, the gas would turn into sulfuric acid. Within minutes, all the Roman soldiers in the tunnel perished. This happened when the Roman troops breached the Sasanian tunnel, located directly beneath their own. The lone Sasanian soldier who died might have been a victim of the very weapon he used and perished due to the toxic gas. Once the tunnel was cleared, the Sasanians piled the corpses of the Roman soldiers at the entrance of the Roman tunnel as a protective barrier and proceeded to destroy it. 9. Psychological warfare. The Battle of Pelusium was a significant historical battle that took place in the 6th century BC. In this battle, the Persians defeated the Egyptians and became the new rulers of the land. The battle is one of the earliest examples of the use of psychological warfare. Knowing that the Egyptians revered cats and considered them as symbols of the goddess Bastet, the Persian king Cambyses II ordered his soldiers to paint the image of the cat deity on their shields. It is said that throughout the battle, the Persian army always marched behind a large number. The Egyptians dared not harm these sacred animals and were compelled to surrender the city to the Persians. 10. Archimedes' heat ray weapon. It is said that the Greek mathematician, engineer, inventor, and astronomer Archimedes 287-212 BC invented a type of heat ray weapon, also known as the death ray, to destroy attacking warships in Syracuse, a renowned city in the history of Sicily. According to the author Lucian, in the 2nd century and many centuries thereafter, this weapon concentrated reflected light from polished bronze shields onto enemy ships, causing them to ignite. Although historians are still debating the existence of this weapon, experiments have shown its feasibility. In 1973, Greek scientist Ioannis Sakas constructed 70 copper-coated mirrors focused on a wooden model or Roman warship placed 50 meters away. When the reflected light from the mirrors converged onto the ship, it caught fire. In 2005, a group of students from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology MIT, USA, also successfully simulated this ancient weapon. They used square-shaped mirror fragments to set a boat on fire in the port of San Francisco.